afternoon, no matter where in the heck in the world you are. It's the one and only V, the Gorilla Economist, coming to you live on this edition of The Great Game with Matthew Ehret. The man of the hour is here, fresh from the front lines of the Canadian Great Honkathon. The one and only Matthew Ehret is here. He's going to be telling us what he has learned from these interviews, walking around and seeing everything face to face with the people on the ground. He was with the people on the front lines, folks, so it's going to be exciting to hear that. And talk about all the latest developments that is happening everywhere, from the craziness that is of the Ukraine situation in Europe. And heck, if you want to even touch base on the insanity that's going around with the Olympics and Taiwan and this, that, and the other, I mean, there's just so much to talk about, Matthew. I don't know where to begin. Folks, you can find his work over at thecanadianpatriot.com, thecanadianpatriot.com, also as the Rising Tide Foundation.net, risingtidefoundation.net. And let us not forget his Substack. The links are all in the description box. Make sure you guys click on it and show your love and support. And with that being said, Matthew, how are you, buddy?
Good, V. Always a pleasure to be back.
Get his books. You gotta get the books. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just started digging into the Unfinished Symphony. Oh my God. Yes, I gotta tell you, I got the books, man. I cannot wait. Volume 1 and Volume 2. Guys, like let me just watch this. Welcome. I got.
Yeah, and there's gonna be a Russian edition out very soon, in the next couple of months. So
get this
both sides of the Iron Curtain, huh?
Folks, I'm not playing around when I say you need this. Okay, you need this. Go right now, Matt. Where are they getting? RisingTideFoundation.net.
Easiest way to get it would be on the CanadianPatriot.org site. Right up top, you'll see like buy the books all over the place. So that makes it very user friendly.
Buy the book.
If you can't afford the books, send me an email. I'll send you free PDFs of them anyway.
There you go.
But yeah,
educate yourself.
Huh?
Get it and educate yourself. Bring yourself up to speed. Volume 1, Volume 2. It is the 1-2 punch that you need. Get these books. Absolutely invaluable. Put it next to your Bible on your coffee table. Okay. I mean, I have, recommended reading it. That's not sacrilegious. Dude, recommended reading in my house. You got the Bible, you got Atlas Shrugged, and then you got to have these bad boys right here. Right here. This is what you need. All right, Maddie, I'm done.
That's cool. And I am not paying V one cent.
No, he's not paying me a cent. It's a friggin' awesome book.
His own heart.
Yeah. It's a friggin' awesome book. You don't get it. It's like you don't get it. I mean, my God.
Yeah, there's 2 volumes, and one thing that this ties into the experience in Ottawa that I'll go through a little bit of this is that this work, these 2 volumes, emerged out of a longer study that occurred over the course of about a decade on the untold history of Canada. It was a 4-volume series. I wrote 3 of them. One of them was written by a former colleague of mine, dealing with why Canada failed to join the American Revolution in 1776 when we had the chance to be a signer, a 14th colony, saying together that we would create a new republic together for the first time on the earth and break away from the British crown. Why did we fail to accept Ben Franklin's offer, despite the fact that he was up here organizing fervently, and that this process had been underway for many years, even before 1776? And even despite the fact that there was a certain common sense of brotherhood and common sense of a fight for freedom, and a hate of empire that had been firmly ingrained in the hearts of the French Canadians. Despite all of that, we failed. So what were the political intrigues? What were the fifth column operations, the psyops, that disrupted the flow of what should have been a very different course of history when we had a chance? So that question was answered over the course of these 4 volumes, which took us through about a 280-year sweep of history in a story of Canada that I don't think anyone had ever quite told in a cohesive way. And so coming out of that, the clash of the 2 Americas became an organic next step. Today, the experience going on with the Freedom Convoy that had converged about 10 days ago in Ottawa is a very interesting case study. I myself was very challenged by it all, and I continue to be somewhat challenged by it, though I have a better handle of it, what it is now. Since, being a Canadian, I sort of developed a little bit of a systemic disappointment with Canadians per se, looking at the history of constant failure to rise up to the occasion, it demoralizes you a little bit. It took a little bit of the wind out of my patriotic sails, so to speak. The more I learned, and the more you realize that Canada has always been primarily with a few exceptions, it's been primarily a hub for British imperial manipulation of the United States and destruction of good things that were going on in the U.S. You can't explain how those good things were destroyed. The assassination of Lincoln, the overthrow of Reconstruction, the killing of Kennedy, and many other things, if you don't look at the British staging ground of this monarchy of the North, which had always been a subversive sort of element for most of the time. And again, there are great exceptions, which I tried to tell the positive, heroic stories of great Canadians who had been scrubbed out of history or slandered. But despite that, it is demoralizing. So I sort of this is my first personal experience of something truly in my lifetime patriotic and legit. And I had to go on the ground in Ottawa to see for my own eyes, to talk with the people. And it's very different from a lot of the fake, as intellectuals, we tend to get a little bit in into our heads sometimes, thinking about grand strategy, global geopolitics, how revolutions are orchestrated by the likes of George Soros's and the CIA and NED, and oftentimes with always in those cases with the political agenda to disrupt target nations for geopolitical purposes, and utilizing freedom movements in name only, but to really get the mob to become like a weaponized battering ram against the institutions of nation states. That's been sort of my tendency of wiring my mind and thinking about revolutionary processes. So this is something which is actually real. And you go through this thing. I spent the day there, negative 22 degree temperatures, probably a lot colder with wind chill, and negative 20. We're in the Celsius process up here in Canada, or the metric system. Yeah. So negative 22. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. But it's damn cold.
18 degrees, 20 degrees around there, so low teens or something like that.
It's so cold.
It's freezing.
It's painful. Yeah. After a couple of hours of walking around, I couldn't feel my face. I could barely use my mouth. It took me 500% more effort just to use the muscles in my mouth to speak into my little selfie camera. It was really hard. But despite that, the joy and activity of thousands, I mean, every single street I walked up and down with a few of my collaborators, every single street was packed with a very well-organized set of trucks making a lot of noise, as it is their right to do. And there was just a sense of joy. It was, again, not like those Occupy Wall Street type encampments, which I think we've all seen at different times back in 2010, which turned very quickly into anarchist-run dens of drugs. Murders had happened. It turned into chaos pretty quickly. And it was there was no real strong set of demands except we want bad people on Wall Street to disappear. A lot of this became very much co-opted by George Soros-funded black, what do you call it? Black. I forgot the name. Not Black Lives Matter, but there was Black Bloc. That's
Black Bloc. Black Bloc.
Yeah.
Right. It's it's U.S. federal agencies along with Soros NGO actors, with the feds running the logistics and the NGO actors doing the harm. We've seen that happen several times all over the place, from Seattle to back in the Seattle WTO protests in the 90s, where they first emerged as the Black Bloc, all the way to Occupy Wall Street. And the Black Bloc emerged from Operation Yellowbird, which was first tested in Myanmar in 1983, then again in Tiananmen Square, coming right out of Hong Kong, by the way. Good.
That is extraordinarily interesting. I did not know about the Yellowbird connection. Fascinating.
It's the same character. Everything that was their beta test. So that's how they ran the whole entire thing. That's why when you look at the original Seattle WTO riots that occurred back in the 90s, it's the same thing. Disgruntled student protesters, student rights activists, this, that, and the other, and anti world trade people, but they're all commies, all different types of stupid ideologies, all being managed. It was the beta test. What happened in the 80s in Southeast Asia with Myanmar, and then later Hong Kong, which the Hong where it incubated in Hong Kong, then went to Tiananmen Square, and then what you see also at the School of the Americas. Okay, all of that culminated. That's all lessons learned in the Black Bloc. The Black Bloc became a more sophisticated evolution of Operation Gladio in some regards. Okay, but then they realized a powerful weapon to use on government soil, in U.S. territories, in U.S. soil, without anybody thinking twice about it.
Oh, very good point. Very good point. And exactly that is exactly what we'd seen happen. It was just that in the case, and I'll just go on a quick segue before jumping back to Ottawa, but in the case of the Montreal, and I was also participating in the Boston Occupy Wall Street thing for a little bit, but I spent most of my time at the beginning, at least for the first couple of weeks in Montreal, where I'm based. And, there was a lot of potential. There was a lot of good people. They were trying to use the opportunity to educate the mess that had congealed in tents and everything. And in the financial district up here, and there was an idea to showcase documentaries, have lectures, really give people, use this as an opportunity to get people to think on a much bigger level, and also call for explicit demands that would be something you could organize around instead of something very nebulous. Make this bad system go away. It's useless to say things like that. So within about a week, it had totally been taken over. Any type of positive discussions were totally annihilated under this fake democracy where people were just voting like this at these assemblies, or voting like this if you want to vote down. They had these weird hand signals that were strange, and anything that involved making concrete demands for, let's say, restoring Glass-Steagall, breaking up the banks, things that would actually work, revive national banking. All of these things were subverted, and at a certain point, I had a political table with information with a few friends. That was turned upside down, and we were attacked violently. And there was actually a vote to kick out anybody who was trying to propose concrete policies. So they actually had a democratic vote to exclude a whole bunch of people who were actually trying to have a discussion about where's this thing going. So yeah, it was a complete chaos operation. This thing is different. The demands are not ideological. This is not an ideological Marxist type of thing going on of fake pro-labor groups that are just academics deploying anarchist students. It's not like that at all. These are people who are blue-collar workers. They want their freedom. It's a very simple demand against tyrannical government, which is commandeered by foreign interests. There's a great understanding about the nature of the World Economic Forum around the idea of a technocratic reset of society and the takeover of nations through fifth columns, deep states. Anybody that I had spoken to had a strong understanding. We had signs all over the place. But really, it's the desire to have freedom and to have a right to work and to feed your kids. There was a sense of joy. There are hockey games. There were like literally just areas of the streets that people were just playing hockey. You had bouncy castles for kids because there's a lot of children, a lot of young people all over the place. Very, very peaceful, and outdoor dancing, free food, hot chocolate. Just an incredibly positive overall experience. The other thing that I found very interesting is that three separate groups who have a lot of antagonism were all brought together. So there's a large quantity of American flags, a large quantity of Canadian flags, Quebec flags. So you had the French Canadians and the English Canadians. There's a lot of animosity, right, between French and English Canadians. I spoke to one truck driver from Quebec. There's a lot of Quebecois who said, my whole life I've always considered myself Quebecois, but now I feel like I'm Canadian. And East Coast and West Coast, in Canada, there's a lot of animosity between the West Coast Canadians and the East Coast Canadians who feel like they're in two different universes, and they kind of are. Right. There was none of that differentiation. Everybody was together. There were signs of the "Don't Tread on Me" flag that had been something that arose out of the American war against the British. There were, like I said, this is something the Canadians, and you're in Ontario when you're talking about Ottawa. The motto for Ontario is something to the effect of "We will always remain loyal to the British." And here you have, it was founded by United Empire loyalists who chose to backstab the cause of the revolution and set up a base in British friendly territory. But here you have people again who are tapping into something much more human and universal. And on top of that, you have not, I won't say copycat, but you have other freedom convoys being inspired all over the place, in Quebec City, in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, in British Columbia,
Australia, New Zealand. Yeah,
in
it's
Finland,
spreading.
Norway, Germany.
Germany, right?
There's discussion all across the U.S. for similar truckers to do the same thing, and the amount of political clout that these people wield is very great. The dangerous thing now is that, and I've listened to enough videos of the representatives from the Ottawa convoy, which again has been completely peaceful. There's been an effort to try to smear them as Nazis, racists, insurrectionists. Mark Carney just joined his voice into the fray, who's based in Ottawa right now. And he basically called in the Globe and Mail, published yesterday.
God bless him. A Goldman Sachs acolyte. He's upset.
Oh yeah, it was done so much great good for humanity, right? As a Goldman Sachs investment banker and head of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada, what great things he has done for Canadians. What a patriot! But he's literally, and they're saying that we have to go after legally those who have provided funds to the insurrectionists, who he labeled as he likened to Nazis, a Nazi insurrection to overthrow the government. That is not what they want. All claims have been to have a negotiation with people who have clout, ideally Trudeau, but of course Trudeau, triple boosted and all, has come down with COVID for what is it, a third time, conveniently on the day that they arrived, and was like airlifted out to some secret location to recover.
He's at the White House with Biden, man. That's where he's at. He's in the off-site White House with Biden, where they have the set up. You know, he's over there.
Right. He's disguised in camouflage as a blackface.
That's what it is. He's one of the he's disguised as a Secret Service agent.
Or one of Biden's servants.
One of the, exactly, with blackface on and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So they, it's very clear that the government currently has no interest whatsoever to negotiate, and instead they have called the mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson, has called for a state of emergency. There are already a few arrests that have happened. There was a lot of talk of the danger of a much larger set of arrests. Yeah, maybe false flag. I mean, we've seen containers that that's the good thing about living in a world where everybody has a recording device in their phone. But there have been just like in the case of the Black Lives Matter protests in the United States last year, there are these containers of bricks just laying around, right?
Oh, how convenient!
Yeah,
that's that Soros logistics right there.
Absolutely, just rubble and bricks, just drop there in the middle of the night. Don't ask questions. No reason for that. So people are taking, obviously footage of that and putting that on social media, just getting across, like, if these things are used, it's not the truckers who are using it. We've had, in the middle of the night, early on, some people went and spray painted Nazi symbolism on like graveyard sites and some statues, which you're not going to, I mean, if you're going for a freedom convoy, you're not going to like wake up in the middle of the night and start spraying swastikas. So this is obviously other things being infused for photo op purposes, so that these guys like Carney and Trudeau and others have something to talk about when they try to call this thing a fascist insurrection, likened to January 6th.
Oh yeah, they're calling it already. Like it's our insurrection.
Yeah,
I mean, these statists love to throw that term around. It's our insurrection. It's these fascists, these Nazis. It's disgusting. They're so desperate to control a crumbling narrative.
Yeah, and I mean, there's people of all colors there. When you actually go there and see with your own eyes, there's nothing. The one person that was walking around with like this Confederate flag, there's video footage, because that's what the mainstream media took a picture of, this one guy with his Confederate flag and a sign saying "Stop lockdowns," and fully masked up, right? So right there, it's weird because nobody's wearing masks. But this guy, all of a sudden, he's like an Antifa black, all you can see is his eyes. And the convergence of the actual truckers and their families and supporters just converge on him and kicked him out of the thing in a second. But it's only the couple of photo op pictures of the guy walking around that made it onto the mainstream media. Again, conveying to people who actually still believe in the Canadian government-funded media, which, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars, especially under COVID, have been funded by the Canadian government, by taxpayers, to CBC, other mainstream media outfits, just to promote the World Health Organization line. The CBC itself gets $1.2 billion of taxpayer money annually just to push propaganda. So it's all a very controlled narrative. The danger right now as well is that as of the last 2 days, police have begun going in to the encampments and stealing the fuel from the truckers. Again, nobody has gotten violent. Everyone has an agreement, which is the
How are they
wise.
going to how are they going to keep warm? It's like negative 20 something degrees outside, and they're taking fuel that they need to power their generators to keep them warm. This is
Well, that
You want to talk about an insurrection? This is a siege that's going on, man. This is siege done by the government of Canada, done by the authorities
yeah,
in Ottawa, and these
yeah.
police that are carrying out. This is siege. You're taking away their fuel. What's next? You're going to take away their food?
Well, yeah, and they sort of are. Like one of the policies that they've done under the state of emergency has been to make it illegal for anybody to be caught providing supplies into Ottawa downtown region. So if you're bringing food, if you're bringing toilet paper, if you're bringing gasoline or whatever, now you can be arrested. And some arrests have begun just by people trying to bring some food back into the area. So they are trying to choke them off. I don't think this is going to work. I mean, these are trucks that were already packed to the brim with supplies that could last a very long time. So I have my doubts how well this is going to work, but that's why the danger of this also escalating to a point of getting violent by the state. There's insiders who seem to have a pretty good sense of some inside intelligence who have provided word to the organizers of the convoy, who just did a press conference I watched, that there would be a potential blackout where all cell phones, other devices would be all shut off during a raid. Is a detention facility set up just north of Ottawa, which is possibly a place where they would be taking a lot of the people. And the idea would be to intimidate those who would not be arrested. I mean, they wouldn't be able to arrest anybody if they wanted to. There's too many people. But the idea is to psychologically intimidate as many as possible who just end up leaving out of demoralization. So that's another danger, which is why the organizers of the convoy called for anybody in Canada to take this opportunity now to add reinforcements, to come take the time off of work and go and participate now in this. The thing here again is that there's no violence. This is the very clear thing. There are very, very powerful speakers. There has been some, obviously, as you always get, there are some shitheads who try to present themselves as being representative of the people. It always happens. Some QAnon affiliated woman calling herself the Queen of Canada, who is obviously just absurd, has, tried to steal some of the limelight and make the whole thing sound completely insane. But it is absolutely nonviolent. It is completely rational. And again, the only piece of violence, the only evidence of any violence that we have seen coming out of any of these freedom convoys is the one case in, I think it's in Saskatchewan, or is it Winnipeg, where
The Jeep driver of the Antifa guy who ran over people with his Jeep all by himself. He was driving his Jeep by himself, and he had a medical mask on.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
is the dead ringer of who this guy belongs to. He's in a Jeep running people over, and he has a mask on.
Yeah, exactly. And he ran over some guy's foot, hit a few people, and I think they caught him for a misdemeanor charge or something like that. He obviously was trying to kill people.
Attempted murder. The guy should have been beaten within an inch of his life and thrown into prison for the next 10 years. It was attempted vehicular manslaughter, at least 10 counts, because that's how many people he hit. But of course, he gets a misdemeanor. This is criminal, man. If he gets a misdemeanor, you know what that means? He was on the government payroll. He was an agent provocateur.
Oh, that's very likely. We've seen enough of those. Back in there's so many cases of false flags and provocateurs. I just not that long ago in 2014, in fact, there was a false flag that resulted in some serious gun control laws and other CSIS controls over Canada, which had inflamed massively. I think it was called Bill C-14. I'm forgetting now. It's been so long, but it was all sparked by a shooting don't know if you remember this, but there was an Ottawa shooting that involved 2 soldiers dying who were standing at a
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
statue, right?
Yep.
The whole thing was shady as all hell. Not only because it's weird, like this statue never has guards on it, period. They just like decided all of a sudden after decades to just put 2 guards there who were then like the next day shot to death. Very questionable because we don't really know what happened to the bodies or anything. And then the guy runs, who does the shooting. He runs to get to the Parliament building, which is about a 20-minute run. It's very far. It's a huge hike, especially with your automatic weapons and everything like that.
I want to know who is the gaggle of morons who get together and write out these false flag scenarios. Listen, Jim, what we're going to do is we're going to place 2 soldiers here. They've never been on guard duty, and no one's ever guarded the statue, but we'll place them there, and the next day we'll shoot them. Then I have a genius idea. We'll have our gunmen, while holding a gun, run through a busy public street for 20 minutes straight.
Yeah.
Parliament.
Oh, it's absurd. It's absurd. It's really absurd. And like Ottawa is kind of like it's like any other capital, Washington or London, England. There's CCTV cameras everywhere. It's a bit of a police state controlled area. So to say, oh, we just didn't see this guy in time, and let him run all the way up there into the Parliament building where this other story occurred where he basically just ran in shooting, didn't shoot anybody per se. And the guy who ends up being the hero of the day is this in Canada, in monarchical governments, you got this a lot of weird things, but this guy's like the guy who was the garter of the staff or something. Who,
yeah, the garter. I'm surprised. I'm surprised they didn't script it in a way where it was Justin Trudeau that saved the day.
Well, I mean, this is a guy who is like, yeah, he walks around like
he's the captain of the garter,
hat and regalia and a big like golden stick to usher in the Parliament sessions, and that's like his job for something. And he goes out shooting as this great hero and like kills the guy. Now here's the weird thing. 2 weird things. This guy is rewarded by becoming the ambassador to England or something immediately afterwards. But number 2, the actual shooter is the son of a woman who was not just an RCMP officer. She was the head of the regulatory agency that oversees the RCMP. That was her son, Bibo. Something Bibo, and the father of this kid was like a Libyan billionaire who had been part of the anti-Gaddafi networks. It was a weird situation. You're like, well, what the hell did you do to this kid? Like, it's like a sacrificial kid that you just like, had to offer up to the system to maintain your position or something.
Listen, Akbar and Julie. Here's the deal. We're gonna really increase your profits here. You want to get this deal done? You got to help us out with this narrative. Your son. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put him through some MK Ultra stuff from our CIA buddies, and then we're gonna have him shoot 2 guards, run 20 minutes in broad daylight in one of the most heavily surveilled cities on God's green earth, and we're gonna make a guy in a funny costume kill him at the end. Sounds good? All right, sign here. I mean, dude, the deep state used to do some really good assassinations a long time ago and really good false flags. They just suck right now, man. It's so bad.
I know. No, I know. They really need to hire some different creative writers. It's really something.
Because the problem is everybody that's writing for them these days, they're all woke. That's the problem.
Yeah, I guess so. Eh? Well, it's like a January 6th. Like, what are we gonna do? Let's get a guy to paint his torso and put a big bullhead on himself to really just get across the fact that these insurrectionists are just beasts of the jungle. And we'll make him the spokesman for this this takeover. The beast take over the state. So yeah, I mean, the whole thing. It's just it's desperate. It's complete. I mean, it's also creating certain political ruptures. Like the Conservative Party right now of Canada has gone through a bit of a coup d'état, where the head of the party, Erin O'Toole, has been ousted by a sort of inner caucus rebellion. They're going to select a new leader pretty soon. It might be this guy, Pierre Poilievre, who's not a bad guy. He's he's got bite. He's come out pretty courageously on a number of occasions, calling out these types of tyrannical policies. The current woman who's in as a interim Conservative Party opposition head in the parliament is not bad. I've heard her in action, and she's pretty solid. Of course, we don't really seem to have a government right now because, like, we have some guy I've never heard of just standing in for Justin Trudeau, like a shitty tied, disheveled look, who's kind of nervous, speaking in the House of Commons with the woman who's the opposition, but she's not really the opposition either of the other party. He's been ousted, so there's total turmoil. There's fissures all over the place, and it's because the elite who are trying to manage this show have completely been operating on an ivory tower formula, mathematical way of trying to govern society from a technocratic standpoint, where they have no actual humanity within them. They don't know anything about the people themselves. They don't know how to connect with the people, the base, which is, I think, the best chance we have right now is that the actual human beings, real human beings, not ideological, conditioned creatures, not the Borg types of Davos who have taken over the controls of much of the deep states of our government in Canada, the US, and Europe. But the real base, this is where the power has to reside, as long as it doesn't get conflated into anarchy, but rather makes very concrete demands right now of having the right to work, the right to have a life, the right to feed your family, right? Very basic things, the right to move. We have a for those who don't know, a lawsuit, a very interesting one, being put forth right now in the Canadian government against the Canadian government by Brian Peckford. This is one of those potent strategies that I think has a lot of good behind it, where Brian Peckford was a former premier of Nova Scotia, but he's also a former signer and drafter of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that was made into so-called law in 1982. And this guy, he's the last surviving member of the team that put that forward. And I've got a lot of problems with it. I don't think it's a real constitution, but it is the basis around which freedoms have been fought legally in courts. It is an important document from that standpoint. And he's making a very simple case as a co-founder of this thing. It's like one of the co-founders of the U.S. Declaration or Constitution, going out decades later and arguing in the Supreme Court that that the actual founding documents are being infringed upon and destroyed. So he's doing that. And Section 8 within the Constitution of Canada, the Charter, it guarantees rights of travel for any Canadian in and out of Canada, as well as within the provinces, under obviously the COVID emergency rules. That's all been deprived. The unvaxxed are not allowed to move from province to province unless they have their own car or want to walk. But you can't be on a train, you can't be on a plane. So this is a legal suit that could get results within the next few months even. People should be rallying around things like that. The other thing that is very important is that the fissures in the technocratic system, the narratives are breaking down on so many levels, and internationally, I think we've seen this. We talk a little bit about this, I guess, before we sign out, but in the case of the war drive against NATO, against Russia, that the U.S. has been trying to utilize for various reasons, is demonstrating that there is no cohesive voice amongst the members of NATO at all. All you're getting now is infighting, kind of like you have in the Canadian governing class. There's backstabbing, infighting.
Yep.
The Croatian president has said, if this thing gets hot, we are not participating, even though we're legally mandated to as members of NATO. We are not.
Who said this?
The Croatian president.
Yeah, that's spreading. I mean, Poland's already in the same house. They're like, we don't want to be a part of this. Hell, even the Ukrainians don't want to be a part of this. And also, this is the reason why I'm looking at Macron speaking with Putin the other day, where he actually flew to Moscow. And isn't it funny that in the last several days we've had Macron in Moscow, we had Bolsonaro in Moscow, you have the president of Argentina in Moscow, you had several other world leaders in Moscow. Supposedly Moscow, the capital of Russia, a country that's supposed to have an economy the size of New York City, a country that is basically a gas station posing as a country, right? But somehow everybody wants to fly to Moscow to meet with this guy to do this deal because they know what the reality is on the ground. Macron, we all know that he's been spurned and he's gotten jilted. The French got screwed over with that AUKUS deal, right, with the submarine deal in Australia. They understand, look, any war that breaks out near and or involves NATO and Europe does nothing to benefit Europe. It is to keep Europe subjugated under the Anglo-American power structure. That's what this whole damn thing is. That's what it comes down to, and it's incredible. And this is the reason why Boris Johnson, I call him Blowjob, Bojo, snubbed Putin's phone call, and then tries to go back, and now he's trying to get a hold of Putin again, trying to talk with Moscow. All the while he's on the verge of losing his job. It's ridiculous. It's pure comedy, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, and even the Argentinian president Fernandez has also just recently come back from Russia, as well as China.
Absolutely.
You have even Austria is a basket case, especially on COVID. But in terms of not wanting to be caught in the crossfire of a nuclear war, the Austrian foreign minister, or is the defense minister? I'm forgetting. Anyway, one of the two just made a call that this cannot go ahead, and they even said that the British have been lighting fires diplomatically to try to provoke this thing. And this is the Austrians, who are otherwise a very controlled zone. So there's so much dissent. There's efforts by Germany and Russia to try to salvage with Ukraine and Russia the Minsk Accords, and to get the actual Normandy talks back up and running. The U.S. right now, there's a lot of talk. Alistair Crook, who's a great analyst, just wrote an article on strategic culture where he made the point that there is a lot of talk of another U.S. coup being initiated or in preparation in Ukraine once again, as if they haven't done this enough yet, because Zelensky is just being seen increasingly by the Washington establishment as a troublemaker who's not going along with the narrative. And at several key moments, both Zelensky, who is an otherwise completely controlled puppet, he was elected to, on a peace ticket in Ukraine against the Nazi-infested former government of Poroshenko. He's completely abandoned his base for the most part and became a complete puppet for the war policy. However, in recent weeks, especially since Putin's red line was made clear, he's come out saying, like, the narrative that the U.S. is pushing is not real. And his own defense minister has said, we have no evidence that that Russia is about to invade in any way. So you need to kind of have Ukraine on board if you're going to be able to continue with this idea of Russia imminent invasion. Without Ukraine, it doesn't really work very well. So the possibility of them ousting Zelensky in favor of somebody a little bit more friendly to U.S. interests at this point is possible. There's also, this amazing discussion that happened, this intervention between Mike Lee from Associated Press and what's his face, Ned Price, at the State Department. Price was putting out this U.S. intelligence that demonstrates that Russia is planning to use crisis actors to stage a false flag in East Ukraine and Donbass to have an excuse to blame it on Kiev and then go in and invade. And Mike Lee, doing real journalism, did a great job. And he just called them out and said, look, I've been here for, decades doing what I'm doing. And I've heard a lot of claims like this, that there's secret intelligence of this sort, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and others. And it always turns out to be a hoax. So what evidence are you actually saying? And
the fact that I'm here telling you, Mike, the reason why I'm talking about it is the evidence you need.
That's a perfect. You are good. You are good. That is exactly how.
Ned Price actually, one of my business partners actually went to school with Ned Price. Actually knows the girl. He's friends with the girl that Ned Price dated before Ned Price came out as a closet homo. Ned Price was always a lying sack of shit. He's been a lying sack of shit and a piece of crap his entire life. He was a piece of crap going into the CIA, and he's a piece of crap working for the Obama administration, and he's a regurgitated piece of crap right now in the Biden administration. Nothing's changed about Ned Price. He's a lowbrow, low IQ idiot who's out there doing his thing. He's useless. He's a psychophant. That's what he is, with an emphasis on psycho.
Yeah. I mean, I believe it. Just listen to the guy speak. There's nothing genuine whatsoever, which is exactly what you need if you're going to be a high-level member within the Obama, CIA, Biden White House these days.
They're so mediocre, man. It's unbelievable. Can you look at anybody? Can you look at anybody in the United States government or the Canadian government or the British government or even the European Union and say, look, that is a genius state? I can't find a single person that's on a level of a Wang Yi, that's on a level of a Lavrov, that's on a level of a Putin. I can't find a single person. I can't. They're all idiots. They're all morons, and they're so mediocre. It's beyond me. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me to be. I can't even. It's this. I get nauseous talking about it. But go ahead, Matt.
I do too, and anybody should. If you have access to any of your humanity, your stomach should turn when you listen to any of these technocrats trying to speak as if they're human, as if they all sort of have the same sort of template in their projection of what they think of as being ideas, which is just a lot of them have this World Economic Forum TED Talk type of quality, where you can see that they've all been conditioned or trained by the same training camp of just speaking the way Zuckerberg does in his promotional videos, or any young leader from the WF speaks in any given platform. It's detached. There's no humanity. There's no self-awareness. There's no sense of principles that exist in the universe, in their own hearts, or in the universe more broadly. Whereas when you listen to a Lavrov or a Wang Yi or any genuine statesman, you get a strong sense that their words are coming from a different place. Their insights are coming from a different place, where they're more appreciative of the long-term civilizational dynamics that they themselves are representative of morally, as defenders. And you get that when I read through most of not the full 5,000 words yet, but the joint statement that was just made public by the Chinese and the Russians the day that Putin arrived in China a few days ago. And I mean, it's a strong joint statement on the terms for the new era, where there's a very concrete idea that there is that these are more than nation states per se. These are civilizational states that represent thousands of years of experience, of tradition, and that this has to be the basis around which international law, the idea of self-interest, economic policy has to be enshrined. That is the absolute truth of the matter. And to the degree that you do that and locate your individualized identity within that broader sort of continuity of something much, much bigger than yourself that you are participating in and giving back to before you die, the more your access to genuine creative thinking is available to you. If you just think of things as a board game, or as like any of these game theorists, or managing much of the geopolitical order, they think of everything like literally a computer model. There's no deeper continuity in what they're a part of beyond that. They don't have access to that type of creative mental flexibility needed to do proper combat. So they are ultimately self-destructive. It doesn't mean that they're not going to unleash hell on earth based on their level of desperation that they cannot win this game. Does that mean that the good guys, so-called, have won? No, that's not a gimme. There is no accounting for a wounded creature backed into a corner, which could jump out and do something that destroys both itself and its opponents too. That could happen. But overall, people should gain heart with the fact that the empire itself has made itself completely intellectually incompetent, based on its desire that the world and humanity accommodate their ivory tower formulas. And they cannot accept the fact that, no, there's something else outside of the formulas operating on the system that they want to manipulate, that they don't understand, they cannot understand. And Russia and China do definitely understand what this is on a much deeper level. So there are fifth column penetrations into both Russia, China still. These are not cleared, but they have successfully, unlike us, waged their battle against these parasitical foreign ops. And you have a serious battle being waged in defense of humanity coming out of those parts of the Eurasian multipolar alliance, unlike us, where in a high degree at least, our federal elected officials, our executive branches have fallen. It doesn't mean that the game is over. It just means that it has to come from a different sort of environment. And this is where I got a lot of heart, even though I listened to the full Trump speech in Texas. I got to say, he says, as always, dumb stuff. Very counterproductive stuff occurred in that speech. However, overall, what I see with Trump, the one benefit is that he's not a cyborg. Unlike the in the Borg-like hive of the neoliberal rules-based order of NATO, Trump has humanity in him. I could see that. His support base, I mean, 50,000 people, as far as the eye could see, it was a huge turnout. And it was actually nice for me to hear for the first time ever. I never thought I would hear this. Tens of thousands of Americans in Texas cheering on Canadian truckers and the Freedom Convoy. That was nice to hear.
Freedom is a contagious thing.
It is, and it creates. It's a game changer. It's creating new situations that were formerly impossible. Like I said, this current ouster, this coup d'état in the Conservative Party, where the former head of the Conservative Party of Canada was a complete whore for the World Economic Forum and lockdowns. Now he's gone. The government of Saskatchewan is calling for a pullback, a repeal of the lockdown measures. In Quebec, where they were going to do an anti-vax tax that was about to go online very shortly, like what they've done in Austria. This has been repealed. The government of Quebec even said, no, we're not going to do that. Sorry, we made a boo-boo. So you have these shifts happening. So people just have to stay strong and really make sure that they take the opportunity, because, if we were in World War II, a lot of people would be fighting on the front lines. They'd be, Spitfire pilots, in their 20s, who would rather be doing a variety of other things than risking their lives fighting Nazis. But that's what people did at a certain moment when it was needed. If they were in the 1770s, they would be, fighting against the British Redcoats, risking their lives, doing probably guerrilla warfare and other things. I'm not saying that we should do that today. We don't need to. We have constitutional laws now that have, made that not necessary. But it was necessary when it was. In the Civil War, like there was people were risking their lives under a British-funded divide and conquer strategy to spread slavery internationally, and break up the Union and undo the Constitution. That 500,000 Americans died during that experience. And in the Civil Rights Movement, there was lynchings. Young people were being beaten up and being sent to prison for civil disobedience under Martin Luther King's Civil Rights Movement. So those. Unlike it's been difficult for the past 50 years of globalization, because the fascism after the 1960s took on a bit more of a soft fascism of sorts. We were turned into a consumer society, so we had access to our liberties, but we were so increasingly corrupted on a psycho-spiritual economic level that people didn't want to utilize those liberties properly to change the system in any way that disrupted their comforts. So, you could tell people, oh, but look, we're utilizing modern slave labor of Africans and others who have to remain poor to keep their labor cheap so that they could fill up our dollar stores and our Walmarts. But it was very abstract. A lot of people, or you could say, there were people who were saying, that it's the Trilateral Commission, which has taken over control. It's a Rockefeller operation controlling our government, which is trying to bring us into a one world government at some point indefinitely in the future. And again, for most people living in the sort of comfort zone, they were like, well, that's a little bit abstract for me to think about. I could still feed my family. I could still go to work. I can't really think about Africa or Trilateral Commission conspiracies. I'm sorry. So it wasn't a lot really to get behind. Our fundamental freedoms weren't challenged like they were under the Civil Rights Movement, where people still didn't have voting rights. They didn't have the right to even go to a restaurant if your skin wasn't the right color. Or the civil right, the Civil War earlier, or the American Revolution, where fundamental liberties were just not there. That now is the case where it's becoming simple again in that sense, and that's what I think the greatest strength of this movement is, that it's not ideological. It's acting for very simple, fundamental, universal rights that bring all humanity together into one family. With one cause, against one beast, one empire, which is not American per se. It's not even British per se. It's an oligarchy which has international penetrations, and it happens to have its nexus of controls in Britain, but it's not British. The British people are targeted too. The Israeli people are targeted too, as we see. It's an international, supranational entity of the same Babylonian empire system that wants to return to a feudal structure of depopulated pre-nation state systems. That's what we have.
Yeah, the global death cult.
The global death cult. That's the great way of putting it. It's a global Borg-like death cult that wants everybody as mechanical as they are, who is permitted to, live as talking cows as long as you've been, quadruply or quintuply vaxxed and have your social credit scores rated with the proper activities and behavior and thoughts that give you access to the credits that you're somehow going to be granted if you're going to pay your rent or have your driver's license renewed or pay for food this week for your family. So, they want to create this very dystopic, nasty, unnatural world order. Thank God you have most of the nations of the world outside of the transatlantic who have said no to this mass sacrifice. And the question now is what we do here in the West and the weeks and months ahead.
Very well said, man. And at the same time, the deep state, the leaders of exceptional stand are at it again in the South China Sea, where we have things heating up over there as well. It's remarkable, man. I've never seen a group that is losing so badly, still trying to put up points on the board. You should be right now at this point, at this stage of the game, they should be negotiating a smooth transition, but they're not.
No,
it's insane.
You have George Soros coming out with this crazy video calling for essentially regime change in authoritarian China. Like,
did you see him? Get that my wife showed me the video of Soros stalking, right? When he's talking about this whole regime change in China thing. Dude, he's dying. You see the way he talks? She showed me a video of him 3 years ago, and today he's like his mouth is only his jaws moving. There's no facial muscles that's moving. He looks like he had a stroke. He's like, we will have removal of Xi Jinping, and I mean this guy. He's like he's drooling at the mouth. Like, when somebody's taking like too much Botox to the face, and they can't move it has like facial paralysis, and I hope to God he dies a very painful death and very soon.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a Darth Sidious type of after he's been like thrown over the over the cliff.
One could only hope.
But yeah, no, I mean I agree. You think the last days of your wretched life after living such a waywardly existence that you might want to maybe maybe not try to guarantee your place in hell forever. I mean, like, no, he's just totally unrepentant. He's just doubling down in the last little ounce of life energy he has just to,
just to be in the devil.
Yeah.
That's it. Just being the devil. Yeah. It was the happiest times of my life when I led Jews to the concentration camps. It was wonderful. I wouldn't change a thing.
Maybe he's thinking that if he's just like so devilishly bad that he's gonna like be granted a better, comfortable room in hell instead of
better to rule in heaven.
Maybe he would be like, punished in sulfur like torture, but then maybe he's like, if I could just go like full hog, Mephistopheles level bad, maybe then I could be like a lieutenant down there or something.
Oh my God. I mean seriously, man, he's I guess he really does believe in the ideology of better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven,
Yeah, that's exactly it. It.
Unbelievable.
I don't know are there any messages from the audience or anything? Or are we
No, we're good to go. Anything else you want to mention?
No, once again, I'm pretty happy. I think that was a pretty good concise overview of the basics of the week, or the week from where I was standing from.
Yeah,
but yeah, we can definitely pick it up again next week, and
absolutely,
and I'm sure the world is giving us a lot to talk about.
Without a doubt. Again, folks, Matthew Ehret over at CanadianPatriot.org and the RisingTideFoundation.net, CanadianPatriot.org, RisingTideFoundation.net. Make sure you get his books, An Incomplete Symphony. Volume 1, Volume 2 is going to be incredible. Make sure you get it. Make sure you order it. Go to CanadianPatriot.org in order to order the books. Fantastic. And also support him over at the Substack. Amazing Substack. Become a subscriber to not only him, but also his brilliant wife, Cynthia Chung. They both write. Go support them. And with that being said, we're over and out.